This is Chapter 2 from the Purple Book, the Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Role, Scope of Practice, and Regulatory Process. Nurse practitioner core competencies are scientific foundations, leadership, quality, practice inquiry, technology and information literacy, policy, health delivery system, ethics, and independent practice. Leadership competencies are participates in community and population-based focused programs that evaluate and promote mental health and prevent and reduce the risk of mental health problems. Advocates for complex client and family medico, legal rights and issues, and collaborates with interprofessional colleagues about advocacy, policy to reduce health disparities and improve outcomes for populations. Those were leadership competencies. Quality competencies are evaluating the appropriate uses of seclusion and restraints in the care process. That's quality competencies. Policy competencies employs opportunities to influence health policy to reduce the impact of stigma on services for prevention and treatment of mental health problems and psychiatric disorders. And that's policy competencies. Then independent practice competencies, there's an extensive list on page 13 of the Purple Book. Starts with developing age-appropriate treatment plans, applying supportive psychodynamic evidence-based psychotherapies, applying recovery-oriented principles, managing psychiatric emergencies, maintaining a therapeutic relationship over time with individuals and groups, teaching clients and families, demonstrating knowledge and appropriate use of seclusion and restraint. And the list is extensive, and it's available in the Purple Book. And they talk about a bit of a history of the nurse practitioner role. I think the first psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner across the lifespan was first credentialed under the ANCC in 2015. Okay. For regulatory and statutory dimensions of the nurse practitioner role, there's state legislative statutes that grant legal authority for the NP practice, and then the Nurse Practice Act of every state provides title protection. That's who may be called a nurse practitioner and defines advanced practice. So that's the Nurse Practice Act of every state. Provides title protection and defines advanced practice, prevailing state laws that define the scope of practice, and places restrictions on practice, and also sets NP credentialing educational requirements. Now, state grounds for disciplinary action. For the Nurse Practice Act, state grounds for disciplinary action are practicing without a valid license, falsification of records, Medicare fraud, failure to use appropriate nursing judgment, failure to follow accepted nursing standards, and failure to complete accurate nursing documentation. The Nurse Practice Act of every state may specifically require that a nurse practitioner develop a collaborative agreement with a physician. A collaborative agreement is also known as a protocol that describes what types of drugs might be prescribed and defines some form of oversight for the nurse practitioner. Statutory laws are restrictions to practice. They're rules and regulations that differ for each state. They may further define a scope of practice and practice requirements. They may provide restrictions in practice and in each unique specific to the state. Licensure is government permission to practice, a process by which an agency of state government grants permission to persons to engage in the practice of that profession. That's licensure. Credentialing is a process used to protect the public by ensuring a minimum level of professional competence, and that's credentialing. Certification is a credential that provides title protection, determines scope of practice, the process by which a professional organization or association certifies that a person licensed to practice as a professional has met certain predetermined standards specified by the profession for specialty practice, and assures the public that a person has mastery of a specified body of knowledge, and assures that the person has acquired the skills necessary to function in a particular specialty. Prior to moving on with confidentiality, this is more pertaining to the previous slide, but the American Nurses Credentialing Center, the ANCC, is a subsidiary of the American Nurses Association, and it is the only certifying body for advanced practice psychiatric nursing. Certification offered as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner lifespan, ANCC, first started, like I said earlier, in 2015. Scope of practice defines the nurse practitioner role and actions. It identifies competencies assumed to be held by all NPs who function in a particular role. Scope of practice varies broadly from state to state. Now, standards of practice are authoritative statements regarding the quality and type of practice that should be provided. This is standards of practice. It provides a way to judge the nature of the care provided. It reflects the expectation of the care that should be provided to clients with various illnesses. And it can be used, so the standards of practice can be used to legally describe the standard of care that must be met by the provider. Okay, so now moving on to confidentiality and the following topics. So confidentiality are the client's rights to assume that information given to the healthcare provider will not be disclosed. It is protected under the federal statute through the Medical Record Confidentiality Act of 1995. It pertains to verbal and written client information, requires that the provider discuss confidentiality issues with the clients, establish consent, and clarify any questions about disclosure of information. Confidentiality requires that providers obtain a signed medical authorization and consent form to release medical records and information when requested by the client or another healthcare provider. HIPAA is the first National Comprehensive Privacy Protection Act, and it guarantees clients 4 fundamental rights. The 4 fundamental rights are to be educated about HIPAA and privacy protection, to have access to their own medical records, to request amendment of their information to which they object, and to require the permission for disclosure of their personal information. The Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, HITECH Act of 2009, is an incentive payments for sharing specific electronic healthcare data. Meaningful use incentives and electronic healthcare records can improve both individual and population-based health outcomes. Electronic healthcare records can improve quality, safety, efficiency, effectiveness, and outcomes. Some of those measures are e-prescribing, computerized physician order sets, and tracking care and avoiding duplication of services. Telehealth is the use of telephone or video conferencing tools to deliver mental health care to clients who reside in rural areas and who may otherwise not be able to access care, must follow the same standards of care as if delivered in person, must be practiced in accordance with international, federal, and state regulatory agency standards, and must include provisions for emergency care of the client. The psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner must assure that HIPAA regulations regarding confidentiality and maintenance of health record are followed. There are some exceptions to guaranteed confidentiality, and that is when appropriate persons or organizations determine that the need for information outweighs the principle of confidentiality. If a client reveals an intent to harm itself or others, information given to attorneys involved in litigation, releasing records to insurance companies, answering court orders, subpoenas, or summons, and meeting state requirements for mandatory reporting of disease conditions. A case in history is the Tarasoff principle, Tarasoff versus Regents of the University of California in 1976, duty to warn potential victim of imminent danger of homicidal clients. In cases, other cases, exceptions to guaranteed confidentiality are in cases of child or elder abuse. Then there is the informed consent. Basically, this is the communication process between the provider and the client that results in the client's acceptance or rejection of the proposed treatment. Ethics. Important aspect of NP role that deals with moral duties, obligations, and responsibilities. What is right versus what is wrong. Ethical principles that provide foundation and direction for complex decisions. There's 7 ethical principles. Justice is doing what is fair, so fairness in all aspects of care. Beneficence is promoting well-being and doing good. Non-maleficence is doing no harm. Fidelity is being loyal. Autonomy is doing for self. Veracity is telling the truth, and respect, treating everyone with equal respect. In 2015, the ANA, American Nurses Association, published the Code of Ethics for Nurses with interpretive statements, and it has 9 provisions, and here they are. The first one is the nurse practices with compassion and respect for the integrity, dignity, worth, and unique attributes of everyone. Number 2 is the nurse's primary commitment is to the client, whether an individual, family, group, community, or population. The nurse promotes, advocates for, and protects the rights of health and the safety of the client. The nurse has the authority, accountability, and responsibility for nursing practice, makes decisions, and takes actions consistent with the obligation to promote health and provide optimal care. Number 5 is the nurse owes the same duties to self as to others, including responsibility to promote health and safety, preserve wholeness of character and integrity, maintain competence, and continue personal and professional growth. The nurse, through individual and collective, number 6, the nurse, through individual and collective effort, establishes, maintains, and improves the ethical environment of the work setting and conditions of employment that are conducive to safe, quality health care. Number 7, the nurse, in all roles and settings, advances the profession through research and scholarly inquiry, professional standard development, and generation of both nursing and health policy. Number 8 is the nurse collaborates with other health professionals and the public to protect human rights, promote health diplomacy, and reduce health disparities. And number 9, the profession of nursing collectively through its professional organizations must articulate nursing values, maintain integrity of the profession, and integrate principles of social justice into nursing and health policy. Some important ethical principles in psychiatry, specific to psychiatry, our clients must be involved in decision-making to the full extent of their capacity through mutual decision-making. Clients have the right to treatment in the least restrictive setting. And clients have a right to refuse treatment unless a legal process resulting in a mandatory court order for treatment has been obtained. An ethical dilemma occurs in a situation in which there are 2 or more justifiable alternatives. It occurs when the choice is made to promote good. Which option sacrifices the fewest high-priority values and uses a harm reduction approach? Theoretical approaches to ethical decision-making are deontological theory, which is an action that is judged based as good or bad, regardless of the consequences. Teleological theory is an action that is judged good or bad based on the consequence. Virtue ethics is the action is chosen based on the moral virtues or character of the person making the decision. Moral virtues such as honesty, courage, compassion, wisdom, gratitude, and self-respect. Ethics of disclosure by providers. Clients have a right to know what is happening during the course of their treatment. Providers have an ethical responsibility to disclose medical errors, accidents, injuries, and negative results to clients. As a result of the disclosure, a client may have the legal right to compensation for harm suffered due to the medical misadventures. Risks versus benefits of disclosure. Risks versus benefits of disclosure of disability regarding employment. So the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, works to prevent discrimination by employers within 15 or more employees against qualified persons in hiring, firing, advancement, job training, compensation, and workplace conditions. The American with Disabilities Act is a federal legislation granting Americans who have disabilities, including mental illness, the opportunity for employment on an equal basis with the non-disabled. Employers are required to make reasonable accommodations for qualified applicants or employees with a disability. The risk of disclosure. So employers may find ways to avoid hiring persons known to have a disability. Coworkers may harass or discriminate against persons with psychiatric illnesses. Assumption that a person with psychiatric illness may be less productive may limit an employee's chances for advancement in career. Feedback for improvement may not be given to the employee because others may attribute the employee's behavior to the psychiatric illness. And there's also being labeled or labeling oneself as disabled may affect one's beliefs or self-image. The benefits of disclosure are able to request reasonable accommodations, opportunity to have a job coach come to the work site, may empower another employee to disclose. Legal considerations are malpractice insurance. It provides a financial protection against claims of malpractice. It is coverage for negligent professional acts. It's coverage for highly technical or professional skills required by health professionals, including NPs. Malpractice insurance is recommended universally for all nurse practitioners. It does not protect Malpractice insurance does not protect nurse practitioners from charges of practicing outside their legal scope of practice. It provides nurse practitioners their own legal representation to advocate for them, even if the agency also carries malpractice liability insurance protection. There are 4 elements of negligence that must be established to prove malpractice. There's duty, breach of duty, proximate cause, and damages. Duty is the NP had a duty to exercise reasonable care when undertaking and providing treatment to the client. So the duty has to exist. Then there's breach of duty is the nurse practitioner violated the applicable standard of care in treating the client's condition. That's a breach of duty. So the nurse practitioner violated the applicable standard of care in treating the client's condition. Then there's proximate cause. There is a causal relationship between the breach of the standard of care and the client's injuries. So there's a causal relationship. And then there's damages. The client experiences permanent and or substantial damages as a result of the breach in the standard of care. Competency is a legal, not a medical concept. A determination that a client can make reasonable judgments and decisions regarding treatment and other health outcomes. Competency is a person is considered competent until a court rules the person to be incompetent. If a person is deemed incompetent, a court-appointed guardian will make health-related decisions for that person. Commitment. The process of forcing a person to receive involuntary evaluation or treatment. The process may differ from state to state. The basic criteria include the person has a diagnosed psychiatric disorder, the person is a harm to self or others as a consequence of this disorder, the person is unaware or unwilling to accept the nature and severity of the disorder, and treatment is likely to improve functioning. And that is the basic criteria for involuntary commitment or evaluation. Involuntary admission is admission to a hospital or other treatment facility against the person's will. Clients still maintain all civil liberties except the ability to come and go as they please. The amount of time clients can be kept against their wishes varies by state. Voluntary admission is admission to a hospital or other treatment facility that a person desires or agrees to. The client maintains all civil liberties, and the client consents to potential confinement within the structure of the hospital setting. The roles of the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. There are scholarly activities. It is important for NPs to engage in the following scholarly activities: publishing, lecture, presenting, preceptorship, and continuing education. Mentoring, a process in which a more experienced nurse practitioner agrees to guide and support a junior colleague in the role, competencies, and skills. It requires mutual respect and an interactive process of learning. It's a needs involvement by both the mentor and the mentee in the relationship. Client advocacy. stand up for clients' rights and empower them to become their own advocates, reduce the stigma of mental illness, help clients receive available services, promote mental health by participating in one or more of these professional organizations: the ANA, or American Nurses Association, the APNA, American Psychiatric Nurses Association, and the ISPN, International Society of Psychiatric Nurses. Health policy. Advanced practice nurses have a legal and ethical responsibility to be a client advocate. Participation in local, state, national, and international health policy activities. Involvement, testify at a public meeting, lobby, or work with the media to bring awareness to an issue. Or phases of policymaking: formulation, implementation, and evaluation. Case management. A system of controlled oversight and authorization of services and benefits provided to clients. It consists of coordinating care, ensuring quality outcomes, monitoring plan of care, and doing advocacy. Overall goal of case management is to promote quality, cost-effective outcomes. Risk assessment and management. The risk assessment continuous monitoring for high-risk situations, assessing persons for non-healthy behaviors. Risk management are activities or systems designed to recognize and intervene to reduce the risk of injury to clients. Appropriate interventions implemented to reduce non-healthy behaviors in clients at high risk and high-risk situations. Risk management is a recognition and intervention to reduce subsequent claims against healthcare providers. Advanced directives. Durable power of attorney for healthcare, also known as a healthcare proxy, is legally binding in all 50 states. So durable power of attorney for healthcare, known as a healthcare proxy, is legally binding in all 50 states. It designates in writing an agent to act on behalf of a person should he or she become unable to make healthcare decisions. It's not limited to terminal illness. It also covers other aspects of illness, such as making financial decisions during the person's illness. It should be considered as an aspect of relapse planning for clients with chronic psychiatric disorders. So, durable power of attorney for healthcare should be considered as an aspect of relapse planning for clients with chronic psychiatric disorders. A living will is a document prepared while the client is mentally competent to designate preferences for care if the client becomes incompetent or terminally ill. But it is not legally binding in all states. A living will is not legally binding in all states, but a durable power of attorney is. Okay. Culturally competent care and special populations. Treating clients from diverse cultures, viewing each client as a unique person, and noting a potential relationship between clients' cultural experiences and their symptom presentation and perceptions. Culturally competent care assumes that if the nurse practitioner becomes more sensitive to cultural issues influencing the client's symptoms and treatment, then more comprehensive health care can be provided. A culture is the learned beliefs and behaviors or the socially inherited characteristics that are common among all members of a group. It may be a racial, social, ethnic, or religious grouping. So a culture is the learned beliefs and behaviors. Culture-bound syndromes are specific behaviors related to a person's culture and not linked to a psychiatric disorder. Be cognizant of inaccurately judging a person's behavior as psychopathology when it really is related to his or her culture. Cultural influences and determinants of health. A family is a group of adults and children who are usually related and whose adults participate in carrying out the essential functions of providing food, clothing, shelter, safety, and education of children. It's a concept broadened beyond the traditional husband-wife-children pattern. Family initially teaches the belief pattern, religious culture, and morals of society. Ethnicity is a self-identified race, tribe, or nation. Community is a group of families often sharing the same race, tribe, or culture. Environment includes both physical and psychosocial factors, such as social contacts, climate, attitude, air pollution, transportation, poverty, crime, water contamination. So that's physical and social factors. environment, our physical and social factors. Homelessness is an enormous problem affecting the United States and the world. It can have devastating effects on individuals and families. Emotional and physical health, drugs, alcohol, violence, and behavioral problems are just a few major issues faced by persons who are homeless. A homeless person is someone who does not have a stable or consistent nighttime housing or maintains permanent residence at shelters, hotels, transitional housing, or public places not appropriate for human beings to live in. Someone intended to be institutionalized who is in an institution for transitory residence. Men, women, and children make up the homeless population. The number of homeless families is on the rise. The majority of homeless families, the homeless families are headed by a single parent, usually a woman. Female-headed households are at high risk for becoming homeless if the head of a household has limited education or empowerment skills, low-paying employment with little or no benefits, and limited access to affordable housing. Teen mothers are at high risk due to lack of education and income that their older parents possess. Reasons for homelessness are mental illness at 50%, addictive disorders, poverty, unemployment, inadequate public assistance, domestic violence, and lifestyle choice. Mental illness and addictive disorders in the homeless population. Approximately 50% of homeless people have co-occurring substance use disorders with serious mental illness, including bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and depression. Schizophrenia accounts for 15 to 45% of the U.S. homeless population. Symptoms are often active and untreated. Untreated, serious mental illness results in symptoms such as paranoia, hallucinations, mania, anxiety, depression, making it difficult for people to maintain employment, relationships, and other activities of daily living. Homeless people with co-occurring disorders are at a greater risk for violence, medication noncompliance, and treatment resistance. Strategies for reducing homelessness are outreach, integrated care, and prevention. Outreach is introducing services to homeless persons with serious mental illness in various settings, building an empathetic, consistent, and caring relationship to provide treatment. Integrated care is treatment combining mental health and medical care to improve overall functioning in the community, may also include access to dental care and pharmacy services. Co-location is providing mental health and primary care services at a single site, and it's part of integrated care, co-location. Prevention is beginning with discharge planning in the inpatient setting, and it provides resources for mental health care, housing, transitioning services, and follow-up. Migrant and seasonal farm workers. Migrants are persons who leave their permanent residence to take agricultural jobs in different locations. Seasonal workers who travel from their permanent residencies seasonally for agricultural employment. Men, women, and children of all cultures can be part of the migrant and seasonal farm workers. It is estimated that more than 3 million migrant and seasonal farm workers in the that there are 3 million migrant and seasonal farm workers in the United States. It's hard to get an accurate census because families and workers, they move a great deal. There's very high incidence of depression, anxiety, and substance use among this population. Meeting the mental health needs of this vulnerable population can pose a challenge because of the ways specific cultures perceive mental illness. Displaying an empathetic understanding and culturally sensitive attitude is imperative when promoting care to this population. Sexual orientation. Possessing a thorough understanding of sexuality is of great importance when communicating with clients of different sexual orientations. The practitioner must possess an open, supportive, and sensitive empathetic attitude toward the client. Understanding the client's viewpoint and what he or she is seeking will help facilitate an effective psychiatric evaluation. In addition, an awareness of the factors that client may have faced because of his or her sexuality is crucial. Sexual identity is how people identify psychologically on a continuum between female and male, and to whom they are sexually or affectionately attracted to. Gender identity is a person's identity along a continuum between normative constructs of masculinity and femininity. Gender identity. Gender dysphoria is the formal diagnosis to describe a marked incongruence between one's experience and expressed gender and the gender assigned at birth. Sexual orientation is the direction of sexual attraction preferred over sexual preference or lifestyle, which imply choice, whereas orientation does not. Some prefer sexual identity because it allows people to determine their own identities. Sexual orientation does not always relate to the gender identity. So there's asexual, not attracted to either sex, bisexual, attracted to both sexes, heterosexual, opposite sex, and homosexual, same sex. And there's more now, but those are some basics. And then transgender is an umbrella term describing a person or persons whose gender identity does not conform to gender norms. Transsexual are persons who identify as the opposite gender from the one that they were assigned at birth. Some change their bodies hormonally and surgically to conform to their gender identity. That's transsexual person. LGBTQ is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer questioning. Many clients seek treatment from a provider of the same orientation. Sexual behavior is the manner in which humans experience and express their sexuality. Forensics and corrections. It is estimated that 15 to 24% of the U.S. prisoners have severe mental illness, resulting in the need for mental health care. Unfortunately, there's a lack of synchronized care among criminal justice, mental, and public health systems, resulting in repeat incarcerations. It is essential to remain neutral, calm, and objective, and be skilled in self-reflective techniques, as well as acknowledging one's own emotional response and biases when providing care for imprisoned clients. Forensic is the application of scientific knowledge to a legal problem and legal proceedings, for example, in forensic anthropology, forensic dentistry, forensic medicine, or forensic pathology and forensic sciences. Forensic science is the application of a broad range of sciences to answer questions of interest to the legal system. It's a high technology field using electron microscopes, lasers, ultraviolet light, and so on. Forensic nursing is the practice of nursing when health and legal systems intersect. The forensic nurse provides direct services to the individual clients, consultation services to nursing, medical and legal agencies, and expert court testimony in areas dealing with trauma or investigations of questioned deaths, adequacy of services delivered, and specialized diagnosis of specific conditions as related to nursing. Forensic versus correctional. The forensic nurse the client relationship is based on the crime committed and investigational aspect of the interaction. That's forensic. Investigational. Correctional nurse is a client relationship based on an offender's current mental health and medical conditions. So correctional is an offender's current mental health and medical condition. Locations are emergency departments, prisons, and police stations. The forensic knowledge base relies on evidence-based practice as well as past psychiatric clinical experience, incorporates both criminal justice and mental health systems. The forensic psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner should possess theoretical and practical knowledge of the criminal justice and mental health systems, functions of the court, litigation procedures, workings of the criminal justice system, relevant case law and health litigation, understanding of mental health, distorted thinking patterns, and impaired cognition. Competence is safety, security, management, and risk and assessment of risk management of aggression and violence, therapeutic relationship, offending behavior knowledge, prison culture, documentation, medical knowledge, psychopharmacology, and crisis de-escalation. So those are the different competency categories for a forensic nurse. And lastly, forensic risk assessment versus a regular assessment. So a forensic risk assessment is protect the public from the person with known mental disorders having dangerous, violent, and criminal histories. That's a forensic risk assessment, as opposed to risk assessment, a psychiatric evaluation performed in the emergency department after arrest or before the person is confined to a correctional facility. So a risk assessment can happen, just a regular risk assessment can happen before the person is confined to a correctional facility. Forensic risk assessment is once the person is known to have a mental disorder and has a history of violent criminal histories. This concludes a recap of Chapter 2 of the Purple Book, the Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Review and Resource Manual, 4th edition. Feel free to leave comments below with additional resources or questions.